Hey, Simon.
Jim, how are you?
I am doing great. It's getting close to the end of the year,
It is.
and things are slowing down a little bit in some ways, picking up in other ways. And yeah, it's been a good year, and just happy to round it out in a good positive way. How about you?
Yeah, well, wait, this is the first full year of Cauzle's existence, right?
It is the first full year. Yeah,
When was the Cauzle anniversary? That was
July 1st.
July 1st. All
Yeah,
right, it's a good date.
been like a year and a half now. Yeah.
Yeah, you could have done July 4th and had freedom from big agency or something. But that's awesome, man. That's how. By the way, how is Cauzle going?
It's going great.
Yeah.
Getting some more clients on board and spreading the good word about MMM, and yeah, it's picking up.
Living the dream. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's been a very busy year. This is a year in which for anyone who's been an avid listener, we know there are at least 25 of you because we just got our Spotify Wrapped.
That's right.
No, we know there's more than that, but we know actually I think we were the number one podcast with 25 people. So I was like, that's awesome. So if you're
Yeah,
one of those 25 people, hello. We appreciate you.
yeah.
I'm sure
Let
one of
us
them.
know. Let
Yeah.
us know in the comments or on whatever LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever you find us, and yeah, we'll send you some swag.
Yes, we that is going to be one of the things we need to do in 2025
Oh
is,
yeah,
is, is get some swag. But no, it's been a good year. It's been a year that I transitioned from my role where I was the chief data officer at Ignite Visibility to now I lead the innovation and growth team at Tenuity. So trading hats a little bit everything is a measurement problem fundamentally, but still sitting a little more outside of the measurement function that I've always been historically just used to. But I think I love this because I think the synergistic element that we need to bring to the world and that we've always been talking about is just being this idea of making measurement accessible to measurement practitioners and non-measurement practitioners alike, because at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat and we're all trying to figure out the same thing. So I think it's provided some good yin and yang thoughts, and it's made me start thinking about some of the things that I'm thinking about for the year ahead. Some big bets, if you will.
exactly. Yeah, and we should let our all 25 loyal listeners and whoever
Yes.
else happens to be listening that normally we have our guests on, and we have a big intro for them, and it's a great thing. But one of the things I found out from the Spotify Wrapped is that one of our most popular episodes last year was the same one we did last year, which was just me and you chatting about. I think we were talking about MMM.
Yeah.
But that was like one of our most popular, most listened to episodes. So yeah, if people want to just hear us talk, then we'll give the people what they want. So
Absolutely. So lock in for the next 3 hours. Because no, it's I have a meeting. We can't. But no, you know what I think that was though, like that episode. What it was the episode was about the MMM gap, and I think what was just interesting about it, we were just challenging each other and thinking a little bit more outside the box. Obviously, we have some great guests who inform us about what's happening in their worlds, but oftentimes it can be somewhat surface level. And I think when we get a little bit deeper on a topic, maybe that's what is engaging to folks. And last year we had done a very navel gazy our year in review, and I think it was interesting to those 25. But no, it was one of those things that I was like, okay, well, like there's some kind of year in review, there's something here. And so this year, what we talked about was, well, what are we thinking about for the year here? Because there's always bets, there's always pontifications, there's always these tinfoil hat moments as we think about the future of the internet, the future of measurement, and that's exactly what today's episode is going to be about. So, Jim and
yeah,
I have got some thoughts. How do we want to do this? Do you just want to throw one out? I'll throw one out, and we'll sort of go
yeah,
about it that way.
yeah. I think we each have like three kind of big bets for 2025.
We do.
So maybe we could take turns on that.
Yeah.
And I'm already looking forward to next year because I plan on a year from now revisiting this episode to see how well we did with our big bets.
Yes.
Keep us accountable. See how off we were.
Yeah. Well, and if you are listening to this though, and either any of these big bets inspire you, or either you love it or you hate it, or, and this would be incredible, is if you've got your own big bets, we'd love to hear about those, because now's the time to make your forecast. Just like I think the Dodgers are going to win the 2025 World Series, so I'm putting that out there for the world. Let's see if that comes true. We've got some other big bets as they do pertain to measurement.
Awesome. Why don't you kick us off, Simon? What's your first big bet?
Sure. So I mentioned just before about my role, somewhat transitioning. So in my role, I oversee the search team, the social team, the shopping team, the commerce team, the TV team, the audio team, display. A lot of teams. There's a lot of functions. It really, yeah, it's really functionally across the board. All these these heads of these groups,
And
and
are
I
these the media side teams or the analytics side teams, or are they all together?
So these are the media side teams, but I think one of the big things that we've thought about at Tenuity is, and this is partly why I align so much with their mindset, was just everything is a measurement problem. And so when I'm saying to the media folks, like, these are folks who are media, yes, but they're specifically in their role because of how they think about measurement and how they think about data utility. And so it is not uncommon to go deep on geo market, geo-based match market, incrementality test design versus user-based in Google, kind of like those are the kind of conversations I'm used to having with an econometrician, not necessarily the head of YouTube, but fortunately we have that structure that allows us to do it, and we can exercise it quite a bit as well. But this has been a great moment for me, and I don't know. I think one of the things that's interesting is just, if you've been in this industry for a while, you definitely grew up thinking about search and social and maybe even programmatic. But I think the world of retail media has been particularly interesting, just in terms of how it has evolved. There are so many surfaces that are available now. There's obviously retail media in a digital capacity. So thinking about like the Amazons of the world, or the eBays, the Chewies, or all these environments where you can transact online. But there's also this real world scope of retail media, almost like a digital out of home function. Think about things like cooler screens, or
Yeah,
even some of the, like, this is amazing. You can buy the surface of the floor. That is a media touch point now.
so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. And
When
what I
even before that, there's always like the end caps on the displays, and like
right,
that's still that's all marketing, and like how do you measure that?
absolutely,
And it's like you're doing trade deals with retailers to get that space, and
right.
yeah,
Well,
it's funny. We don't, in the digital side of things, we would never would even think about that, let alone talk about it. But like things are really running together now, right? Like it's yeah,
absolutely. Well, and this is, to your point, this is we don't think about it in digital world, but, and I think this harkens back to, what was it, the episode we did with the team from AdQuick,
mm,
where we were talking about digital out of home advertising and the nature of digitally transactable billboard placements. Even though it is still a physical placement in the real world, you're using data that is available in a digital medium, and you're also critically transacting in that medium. So you are buying in multiple different places. You're setting time frames. It's not running in a sort of a single addressable capacity. I think this is my big bet here. Just to frame this up, is my big bet is that, because we are seeing so much proliferation in the world of retail media of all these novel services, is that we will see a massive increase in the need and the focus on, from a lot of practitioners, on retail media measurement. We've already seen in the past year that IAB has published their retail media measurement guidelines. If you haven't read those, I highly recommend it, because they start talking about things like view field, this idea of how close do I need to be to a placement. I think what's interesting is there was this false start moment, I think, a few years ago with beacons. And actually, years ago, I was working with, I'm sure I can say it, I think, whatever, this was a long time ago. I was working with Forever 21. And we were working with Google on the Beacons program. And the Beacons program, if you recall at the time, there'd be a Bluetooth beacon that they would install in these locations. And the idea was, one, that could pick up with a cell phone, with a mobile device, it could pick up a signal, and install that mobile advertising ID, as well as you could use it to push a notification to an individual.
not
What was
creepy at all. Marketers
not
ruin
creepy at all.
everything.
Oh, yeah.
That's why
This
we
is
can't have nice things, Simon.
it is. I mean, this is the Jeff Goldblum moment, right? This is the, should we really? Is this? And but I'm a nerd at heart, and so I was just like, I want to figure this out. This is so interesting, even
Yeah.
though it's going to be creepy. I just want to see, like, how does this all work? So I was actually in the very first cohort that Google ever spun up here, and I had to essentially go into Google Cloud and permission these beacons. So there was a very brief period in time where my house, because had to be tied to Google Maps, my house was actually listed as a Forever 21 location. Yeah, which was fun for a day, and
Do you have
then
any
I was like,
teenage girls knocking on your door?
right,
You're like,
no, yeah, yeah. Then I was like, God, this could lead to some real world issues, or like I don't know, like a tax issue or something. Like, we believe you're operating a Forever 21 out of you. I'm like, I'm definitely not. I promise you. But so anyway, I got a beacon, or I got multiple beacons into my house. Very first one, actually, I've got it right here. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it. This is an Eddystone beacon. It doesn't work anymore. The battery only lasts 5 years. This was 6-7 years ago at this point. But that was this first moment, I think, in this world of retail media, and in a sense of connecting an online touch point with an offline transaction. That is still a challenge. But now we're really talking about real world media driving either real world or, interestingly, online transactions. So it's sort of gone full circle in its capacity. So I think the big bet is here really revolves around, one, an increased focus, but two, there will be a degree of deterministic signal that is going to start to get used to a greater degree, which is going to be that creepy component. And I think what we'll see are there going to be more vendors that will come into play that are thinking about, even though mobile advertising, mobile ad IDs are, going the way of the dodo, we will see more brands, more companies try and bring those to life and say, we have these tracking solutions. I don't know how that's going to square with CCPA. I don't see a way that it can, but it is going to be this moment in time where maybe it's going to be greater utility of QR codes. Maybe it's going to be opting in to certain geosignals. Maybe, all these pieces. Perhaps it's the Pokemon Go measurement era where we thought about Pokemon Go and how they use that for real world location tracking and for scanning locations and mapping locations. I think that is what is going to come to retail media as we think about how do we connect the dots from an offline to an online world.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And this is like, it's not even just like connecting the dots from online to offline or offline to online. It's like, it's everything's dumped in a soup together and getting stirred together.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like, you always hear in retail, it's like omnichannel is the strategy for the future. You have to be everywhere. You have to be on Amazon. You have to be in
Sure.
retail. You have to be D2C. You have to have it all, like have all the channels. And like my mind just goes numb thinking about the analysis side of this. Like you're talking about like retail media measurement from like possibly beacons in stores, like actual foot traffic in stores and measuring like, did they see the display end cap and did they purchase? But there's also retail media networks, right? The digital side of that, like the Amazon sure is the 100-pound gorilla. Is that the right saying? The big one?
Yeah.
Um,
They're the behemoth.
but retail media networks over the past few years have like popped up. Like every major retailer wants to have their own retail media network. And then
Yeah.
well,
I
you
mean, Eric has the famous quote, "Everything's an ad network." My
exactly, yeah,
current quote du jour is, "Everything is a retail media network," because
yeah,
literally any company that stores first-party data is now a retail media network. I do think, though, there is and this is measurement adjacent, but there is a fundamental distinction between a retail media network that is truly just addressable data stored with transactional history, and the transactable environments themselves. And I think we've sort of created a convoluted world of like, oh no, like these are all retail media networks. I'm like, Amazon is not the same as the Chase RMM. Like that is a very different scope that we're talking about here in terms of how those signals are being persisted, and critically, the signal that is getting lost in the world outside of these sort of non-transactable RMNs.
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, but it's a place that's ripe for smart analysts to continue working and have
Mhm.
job security because like it's so messy and it's
The more complicated the world becomes, the more measurement is critical.
yes.
And but this is always one of the, I guess, inherent challenges of media mix modeling, right? Is the I guess granularity that we can be operating with. But I'd love to hear what is your first big bet for 2025?
All right. Big bet 2025.
Oh, the
My
sound
first
effect.
my first big bet. Yeah, that's right, people. We have upped our budget for
That's right.
fun audio toys, so now we have sound effects. Um, so my big bet for 2025, I tried to like give this a quantification so that we could look back a year from now and say, did I get it right or wrong? And I didn't have a good way to like quantify it to say like it'll reach a certain threshold, but whatever. I'm just going to say it's going to be right at the end of the year anyway. Um, so no surprise, my big bet is around marketing mix modeling, right?
Mm.
So uh, I think MMM is going to continue to gain traction and adoption rates are going to increase significantly. Let's say adoption rates are going to increase 72%. That's my big prediction. I don't know how we're going to measure that,
Right.
but
Well, what are
that's,
adoption rates at right now?
I don't know. but
I read something. Yeah, I read something a while back that I forget who shared it, but it was of the top of the Fortune 100. All 100 are using media mix modeling at this moment in time,
how interesting.
and
Yeah.
and I was like, that makes sense because a lot of these probably had legacy media mix modeling in play, and a lot of them have been operating in sort of these historically just unmeasurable environments. The question I would have there, or the challenge I would pose, is how far down the chasm does this go? Is there a natural ceiling, or I guess in this case, a natural floor to MMM adoption being a certain size of advertiser, right? Because I think that that's the sort of the core constraint right now
Mm.
is just if you don't spend enough, it doesn't make sense. And but that's like 70% of advertisers.
Yeah, I mean, I usually put the number somewhere between 1 and 5 million revenue, right? If you have at least 1
Mhm.
to 5, or I'm sorry, take that back, strike that, edit this out. If you have between 1 to 5 million in ad spend a year, like
Yeah,
that's about the spot where you're gonna start looking at other measurement methodologies like MMM.
yeah,
Um, and that's a lot of, I mean, those are small businesses, right? That's still a lot of small, medium size that
yeah.
haven't
I
yet.
mean, would he probably like for the 100,000? If you're spending 100,000 advertising a month, you probably want to see like a 3 to 1 ROAS on that. Again, I guess it depends on like there are all these historic heuristics of like how much of your revenue should be dedicated to advertising. But let's say it's 20%, right? Like those companies then have to be making $5 million revenue to if they're spending 1 million there, like that. It is these are small businesses. Some of them are even mom and pop shops, like you see them on D2C Twitter. Um, but there's still a long tail. And it's interesting. There's this interesting corollary with this and like Gen AI creative utility, where we are seeing that being adopted by the long tail, say on Meta, and not by the enterprise. And that becomes like it's sort of like the inverse story here of the degree to which these large businesses are all leaning into MMM, but how far down the path does it go? And maybe that what the challenge there is, it's too complicated. So do you think as part of this, we see there is some intelligence that comes in to make this easier?
Well, so that actually ties into one of my other,
Okay. Oh, sorry.
bets, but
Oh, don't want to get ahead.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, no, so I think there's a vibrant enough marketplace for options for small, medium-sized business that want to do MMM, right? I
Mm,
think if you're looking at the larger, if you're 100, 500 million in revenue size business, you're probably either building it in-house or you're going with an analytic partners or Nielsen.
mhm.
No one ever got fired by hiring IBM or Nielsen, I'm sure.
It's funny.
Um,
Everyone says that, but I'm like, I guarantee people have been fired for that because
oh yeah,
IBM is. I feel like, why are you buying IBM? It's so old. What do you like?
right.
And you're like, I got my degree in the '70s, and you're like, okay, well, that explains it. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Let's make
Yeah.
quick about IBM. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have like, the large organizations, the Fortune 500, Fortune
Yeah.
500 are either building it in-house, they have a large enough team of data scientists, marketing scientists to do that, or they're working with a partner to help them do that. And then into the middle ground, right? 10 to 100 million in revenue, something like that. You could go with a vendor, right? You could
Mhm.
go with a Recast, a Lift Lab,
Yeah.
Lane,
Cassandra.
yeah, a Cassandra, right? Like there's yeah, keen decision systems. Like
That's right.
and the nice thing with that is like these are
Even
sort
by the
of
way, Measured does MMM now too.
exactly, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And there are a fairly wide variety and gap of pricing for that. So like if you only want to spend 10,000 a year, there's
Yeah.
an option for you. If you're willing to go 100,000 a year, there's an option for you. I want to get into like the quality of the options or solutions. I'm sure there's like a bunch of things out there that I have had
Yeah.
time to vet, but the point is there are a lot of options if you don't have the internal expertise to kind of build it yourself, right?
By the
Um,
way, I think well, there's an interesting point there. I just want to align on. We were just talking about sort of the ratios of how much revenue to what you should then spend on advertising, and then there is this one layer below that, which is how much should you spend on measurement associated with, and I'm not talking about the people. The people should always be like it should be a 90-10 thing, right? But how much you spend on measurement technology or measurement platforms. And this is a very broad statement, but I would say on average, I see it not going beyond 2% for most brands.
mhm.
2% of their advertising spend would be spent on measurement. And so like that raises an interesting question here of like, well, gosh, then if you're spending 150K, it's putting you around the 2 to 3K mark in tools. is that a sort of is that sort of the bottom out of this, or is there I don't know, the free Meridian, like it's free but it's people, so you kind of got to
Yeah.
balance that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like you could open source it, but you're not saving money
Yeah,
that way, right? You need
right,
to hire someone full time to do that, and also probably have a consultant like me come on
yeah,
board to help train your new data science hire in all ways, PyMC or Meridian or
yes,
Robin or whatever it might be. Um, but yeah, to your point about like if you're spending 10 million in advertising a year, how much should you be spending in measurement efforts, whether it's
yeah,
tools or people, right? And um, the way the way that I think about it, like I used to have to think about that in terms of Google Analytics, right? When you're selling
sure,
someone GA360 and it's 150K for the license for a year, and it's like, well, but here's why you should spend this much because you're spending this much in marketing and your
mhm,
website and all this other stuff. With MMM, it's a lot easier to make the case that listen, okay, you're spending 10 million a year. If you spend 200,000 on a really good, strong MMM that is going to either save you a lot of wasted spend or improve your efficiency, improve your spend so you can spend even more in the channels that are working and make more revenue. Like
mhm,
it's very easy for an MMM to pay for itself and then some.
right, right.
So it's a fairly easy case to be made there. It's not in that way I phrase it. It's I don't position it as a cost. It's really it's a revenue generator.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very broadly aligned there. I think it is I don't know. Can you make the argument to the CFO? And that is always one of those. So it's the continual problem of marketing. Is like, yeah, you will never get the value of an MMM on day one. You're going to need to work with it. You're going to need to think about it. You're going to need to try some things, and you're going to prove back that the shift in spend that the change in allocation that you made actually was more performant. Yeah, it becomes very interesting. All right, let's we could talk all day on the topic, but let's hit big bit number 2. Unless you got a final thought on big bit 1.
Okay, really quickly, only
Yeah.
because I did some research to get some receipts.
Oh, yes.
Like I can't waste them.
Oh no,
I'm
please.
gonna have to bring the receipts on this one and just show because I wanted to get a really understand like why do I think MMM is really going to take off, right?
Yeah.
So eMarketer just put out a survey earlier this year, and sample size was 282. It's saying the question they asked was, how are you trying to augment your measurement strategy into the future? Select all that apply. And they had 3 options. And the
Yeah.
top 3 here. So it's better, faster, medium mixed modeling. That was the number one. 61% of marketers say that's what we're trying to augment our strategy. Second one was some
Mm.
form of incrementality lift testing. Third one was third-party platform agnostic measurement providers. So like the Lift Labs, the Keens, the Recasts, right? So
Oh,
like
see, I when I see that, it makes me nervous. I go like, oh no, they're talking about the triple whales, like these sort of,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm like
Yeah.
MMM. I don't know. I'm not thinking so much vendor centric as much as I'm like, if you're talking MMM, you're talking MMM rather than a third party a platform agnostic. I'm like, they're probably jumping the shark and going with some model approach.
True. True. So this is my kind of first data point for being bullish
Yeah,
on
yeah.
AI. Second thing here, check this out. I was just playing around with Google Trends, right?
Oh,
And first of all, I want to see what are people calling it? Is it media mix modeling or is it marketing mix modeling? Like, well, I have my own thoughts on the differences between those two terms, but we'll leave that as marketing mix modeling is what people are searching for,
hmm.
regardless of what they think it means. But January 2022, like, was the inflection point, and it's been just on
Hey,
a significant upgrowth since then. And I
very
was looking at
interesting.
like what was Apple doing around that time? What were was IATP,
Yeah,
OTT, or was it iOS 15 and 16, different things like that? Was it around like Google starting to talk about third-party cookie deprecations? That actually was happening in 2020, and then it kind of kept getting pushed back and back. So maybe it's just kind of all of those things together, and people are just starting to realize like, oh yeah, we got to do this MMM thing. So that was
yeah.
the
I
other.
mean, I think there's a bit of like a crossing the chasm moment that these things you talk about them before you search them, and then you can once it's sort of reached a mainstream point enough, you're like, okay, I'm going to search this.
Yeah.
I have something that I call the DigiDay index, and that is anytime that DigiDay does one of those WTF articles, that means whatever that topic is has now at least crossed the 20% chasm, meaning it is something people are talking about and searching about because they have to have a reason. Like there's one about programmatic curation now that I'm like, okay, that was a buzzword, maybe it still is, but until this year, even no one was really talking about it seriously. Now I think I'm hearing it a lot more. So anyway,
Right. Yeah.
more
Okay.
seats.
Last point, and then we'll
Yes.
quickly move on to the next one. this just came out in November. I'll leave my feelings about the whole Magic Quadrant aside in Gartner,
Yes.
but the point is, if you have Gartner producing a Magic Quadrant for something, then that's a good signal that it's kind of reached a certain stage. And they just did the Magic Quadrant for MMM. This is their
Mm.
inaugural one. This is the first time they've done it for MMM. This was just in November, also just recently released. So,
Add this to the list topic. We should do a full breakdown episode of this. I think this to me is like there's a to your point. Let's leave the bias to one side, but I don't think we're alone. I think you know if you saw the CDP one recently, Salesforce #1 CDP. Like really, what was it? Amazon was the #1 SSP. Yeah, and I was like, what is happening? Like this isn't calibrated with my sort of core experience. I saw some of those names, and I'm like, some of those are calibrated.
yeah,
Some of them are not. Some there's some very glaring omissions there. But anyway, that very interesting. And I like that you bought receipts, so we'll have
yeah,
someone to reference to.
exactly. All right.
But yeah,
Next, big bold prediction.
all right. Big bet number two. Big bet number two, and you couldn't do this podcast about big bets for 2025 without mentioning AI. I think we've already mentioned it once. So for anyone playing bingo, that's two, at least, maybe it's not three. AI. AI answer engines. This is a fundamental shift in the nature of search behavior. What we've seen in the past year is the establishment of AI overviews within the Google search experience. It was there, then it wasn't. Now it's back. It's a little bit over the show, but it is coming. It is in a lot more queries. We're seeing a lot more frequently. We have also seen Bing with Copilot as a sort of a side search experience. But critically, what we are now seeing are platforms like Perplexity and Search GPT, and they're talking about advertising. They are leaning into advertising. In fact, what's so interesting about Perplexity is that they've got this not bizarre, a novel, somewhat novel business model where they are using CPMs for search buying. It is a hybrid of search and social. By the way, interestingly, I was chatting with Michael Mascott over at Google, this guy's been at Google since like the PageRank days. Like he's an OG Googler. He told me that Google search started on a CPM model. And I was like, I have no recollection of that ever happening.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I wasn't in the first few years of seeing Google ads and knowing what the sort of original finds look like. But I was like, that's crazy. But it's this really interesting moment where there are certain CPCs that are like $300. If you're selling car insurance, the CPC is through the roof.
Mhm.
There are just these prohibitively expensive terms that exist in their world, and critically, that model wouldn't really work for AI answers anyway, right? Because an AI answer is, here's a question, you're going to guide me through this journey and give me an answer and educate me in that process. And it turns out the query I actually wanted will be established in that response. And this is where I think it's going to be very interesting from a user perspective, the degree to which we see adoption, utility of platforms like Perplexity in particular. This presents a very big measurement challenge, not just in an organic capacity, but also in a paid capacity. I don't quite know how we're going to overcome this without some degree of deterministic signal associated with this, and that is not available right now. So I think we're going to start to see a lot more head scratching. We don't even know how's incrementality going to work in that environment. Obviously, we can't do incrementality with organic search test. You can't do incrementality testing with organic search at this moment. You can try like causal inference approaches. Maybe we'll see something like that. But again, it is so personalized and so unique to each individual. What response they get, that response has never been generated before. Even if I ask the exact same question, it's just going to hallucinate in a certain layer. Get creative with my response. I don't know when my brand is getting mentioned. I don't know how to monitor that. I think these are the solutions that we're going to start seeing come to market as it pertains to signal associated with AI answer engines.
Yeah, I feel like there's a ripe industry here for like companies to come in and say like, how can we be the Google Search Console for ChatGPT and Perplexity and what the others, if they unless they start offering that themselves, right? Like
I could see them doing that and providing that that could be a paid service for them. I think brands are incredibly interested to know where are they being mentioned within the world of AI at this moment in time.
Yeah, and there's got to be someone. I feel like I remember recently hearing about someone or some business or company that was doing this, where they would like let you know how your company showed up in various various LLMs. But like to be able to do that at scale, right? Like how do you do that? That's gonna be tricky.
It
Like
is.
the paid side will get figured out first for sure, right? Like
Paid has to get figured out in order to earn the dollars. It needs to
you'll
be
get some sort of attribution if they click on the link that takes them to your site. That'll be taken
right.
care of. Although it's interesting, like even just now, like are you using ChatGPT application on your computer or are you using the website? Like attribution, how's it going to come through? Like are they going to do that? I
Yeah.
doubt you see that showing up in Google Analytics, but it'd be interesting to see that.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, the organic side of that is just going to be complete mystery for a
Yeah. I
while.
mean, right now on the ad side on like Google and Bing, because there are ads there,
Mhm.
they don't tell you that the placement was associated with an LLM response. You get it through
Uh,
PMAX. That's the format.
oh, it's
And
all
so,
PMax.
yeah,
Ah,
it's all PMAX. So PMAX is everything. And that
mm,
is a major measurement challenge. And then moreover, there is just like there's this component I think associated with well, how do we influence these mechanisms? Because obviously that's the whole point of measurement is to understand the sort of next step for influence. And I think like that's a whole sort of cottage industry that's going to balloon out of what SEO is today is
it's
now
next
range
iteration of
optimization.
SEO.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So that's
exactly.
what I think. What's yours?
All right, big bet number 2. There we go. Got to get that sound clip in there.
Yeah, that's not Jim blowing in the microphone, people. That is a swoop.
We
It's
could
it's
go with
eagle.
there
There you go. Or we
we
could do
go.
like
We'll do that one.
the NFL draft, like bing. What's the when the clock's on when the pick is end is like bing bing. I can't remember how it goes. Anyway,
I have no idea.
big bet number 2.
All right. Well, like riding on your coattails here. So my second big bet for 2025 is also around AI.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure I'm looking at the right one here. So, okay. So one thing that I've been doing in 2024 is taking advantage of the fact that I don't have to ask my employer to do trainings or courses or things like that. I just say, I want to do this course. I want to do this training. So I've been doing a lot of trainings.
Yeah, I think just to future proof yourself, maybe you should have a process where you submit a form to yourself, and then be like, "What was 9 a.m. Jim thinking? He's obviously off with Rocker. No, that's not getting approved." So it's like Sunday morning financially savvy Jim versus like Tuesday afternoon, like I'm just gonna learn this thing, Jim. I don't know. Anyway,
uh,
sorry.
yeah, I mean, to be
You
honest,
get the opportunity to learn. You to be a
do.
self-guided
Yeah.
Sherpa.
What and complete fairness, the last one I did was probably, although initially it was very unresponsible of me financially to do it, but it turned out great, and it's been
Mm,
I love it. So anyway, it was a course I did with Mark Ritson, the mini MBA with Mark Ritson, and it's about marketing, not about analytics, not about
mm,
measurement, not about digital and data. It's about like general marketing, like the 4 Ps, right? It's about, market research, diagnosis, having a strategy, doing brand positioning, and
great.
then letting that inform the actual tactics of the 4 Ps, the price, promotion, place, and price, promotion, place, product, the other product,
Yes.
right?
The most critical P, in fact, some would
Yeah.
say.
And so a lot of where my mind has been lately, partly because of what I've been going through with that course, has been around marketing aspects that aren't necessarily like typical to our world of like measurement and digital and that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that I think AI is going to really start to come into play in the broader marketing sense is in increasing the efficiency, the speed, and the cost effectiveness of certain marketing activities. Specifically, this idea of synthetic audiences, right? Synthetic data. So
What?
there's
Okay. Can we just take what is that? What do you mean by synthetic audiences?
All right. So there is a company called Evidenza. It was
Okay.
co-founded by Peter Weinberg, John Lombardo, and Brian Watroba. Peter and John both came from the LinkedIn B2B Institute. They were there for a while. Really smart guys, really taking a lot of the knowledge and research that's coming out of UK, out of Australia, out of the Berenberg Bass Institute, things like
Mm,
that, and pulling that into sort of in a B2B context and making it sort of like providing that for that information for the B2B side, but for all marketers. And they ended up going off and founding this company called Evidenza. And in terms of you were asking like what is synthetic data?
mm.
Let's ask them, shall we?
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's ask them what is synthetic data. Here we go.
Jim, you're not going to like to hear this. I can't hear it.
No, you can't hear it.
I can't
Oh,
hear it.
oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, I thought I had everything figured out. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, uh, we'll just have to move on without this. Okay. Uh, let me explain what they're saying, and
Yes.
we'll go ahead and stop sharing. So basically, synthetic data, right? You have in the realm of, let's say, market research, right? You're a CRM company, like a HubSpot, or maybe you're new HubSpot, right?
Yeah.
HubSpot 2, terrible name. And you're building your product, you're trying to understand the market and the people that you're, the audiences that you want to target, things like that. And typically you want to do some market research. So you need to find out, who are the buyers of CRMs, and you need to create a survey and survey, potentially dozens or hundreds of CRM buyers. Those people can be hard to find, right? Especially if your target buyer is a CMO or a CEO or something like that. That can take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to run a survey of, your target audience. Um, and it can cost a lot of money, right? And what they're saying is, well, we can use large language models to create to basically say, impersonate a CMO or impersonate a CRM buyer, and then give them your survey. And what they've found so far is uh, the responses they get match up with actual human surveys to the 90 to 95%, right? Like they're almost identical to what human survey respondents say.
Mm.
And so,
That's pretty incredible.
yeah,
Have you seen that episode of Did you watch Black Mirror?
yeah.
Okay, there's an episode of Black Mirror where they have a digital twin. And I
Yes.
think that's exactly what we're talking about, because synthetic audiences, digital twins, I think there is a synergy here. And this is actually, by the way, the language that Gartner has recently been using. So you'll see here, this is the hype cycle for digital marketing that came out just this year. And they talk about the digital twin of a customer right here, and I think this idea is perhaps somewhat synonymous in terms of how do I even there we go stop sharing somewhat synonymous in terms of what's being referenced there. My initial skepticism was going to be, okay, that's a novel way to have a persona that maybe, I don't know, there's been a degree of like, that's kind of, I've always thought personas were overly overly touted in a world of like, but this is all made up. This whole thing, you're acting, you're taking a lot of guesses, all these things. That's really interesting though, that it is mirroring real world respondents in that capacity. That's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
compelling.
Yeah, and they've had there's a few interviews I've listened to about them, and some of the stuff that actually Mark Ritson is an advisor for them, where he talked about going to, I forget the name of the company that they went to, but it's something that you would like, everyone has heard of this company, and they said, we could do this for you, and they say, we don't trust you. There's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, just give you some survey questions. We'll go off, and an hour later we'll come back with some responses. It took you years to do these surveys. We'll do it in a day, and we'll come back and compare them. And they did, and it's like, again, it was like 95% the same.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Little differences on the edges.
That's so interesting. What's also really interesting, there was this, I don't know if you read like Think with Google. Think with Google had a fairly recent article where Media Monks was talking about the impossible campaign is what I think they called it. And the idea was loosely based on this, but what they did was they used Gemini to speak with their personas for targeting for all these pieces. And I was like, what training went into this? Because I don't for a minute believe just out of the gate you will get that type of response. Now, in this particular scenario, I'm like, there's calibration that's happening.
Oh yeah.
There's all these pieces that I'm like, this is really compelling. This is what they were doing. I'm like, you just asked Gemini, and then you asked Gemini what what targeting we should use, and it said PMAX. I'm like,
Oh no.
this is like Google's ideal campaign, because it completely destroys any degree of independent autonomy. And just like, give us more money, and you're like, yes, I will, and that's about it. And I wasn't buying it. But this is really compelling.
Yeah. So yeah, I think AI is going to make things a lot easier, faster, more efficient, cheaper.
Yeah.
On those kinds of things, like the market research and media planning side of things. I thought about what else AI is going to do for marketing. And there's the easy like, oh, it can generate creative or ad messaging, and thousands of creative, and in 6 minutes, whatever it might be. I'm sure that's going to happen. I'm sure people are already doing that. I don't have as much kind of finger on the pulse of what's going on in that area. But then the other thing I thought, the third part of like, how does AI get involved in our work, and what a lot of people in our industry are talking about is, what about measurement, right? About analytics, like how,
Yeah.
I can just upload my CSV file of data to ChatGPT and ask it to tell me, rain down showers of insights on me from the data. And I'm a little stuck on this one. So I feel like I'm a little bit too much inside the bubble to have a subjective or an objective viewpoint here, right? Like you can't read the label from inside the bottle, right? Like,
Sure.
and I come, coming from it from the sort of marketing measurement perspective, MMMs and lift tests and unified frameworks and things like that. There's so many nuances and subjective decisions that are made throughout this entire process of how to build a model, what goes into it, how to transform the data, all that kind of stuff, that I think, AI is still fairly long way off from being able to just feed it your data and have it tell you, oh, spend more here, spend less here, do this, do that. I think that's still a long way off. But again, if you go back 10 years and ask people if they thought AI would be able to pass the bar exam, they would laugh at you like, you're crazy. No, of course not. But
Yeah.
here we are. Right. So like, I have to kind
Yeah.
of temper
Wow.
my bias to think, no way AI will be able to do this with, maybe. So I think my business is safe for now, but like,
Right. I mean, I think the
sure.
thing with the bar exam though is like, or with anything with their logically correct and incorrect statements, it makes sense. I don't think measurement is that cut and dry. I don't think it's that black and white.
No.
I think there are always things that are ambiguous and wrong, and that's the whole point of thinking about modeling, is the degree to which you can deal with ambiguity, and you will accept ambiguity, and you will try and calibrate for ambiguity always existing. I do think though there are some serious, like when we think about like classification, like taxonomic classification exercises, where a lot of this can be handled. And when you were talking about your first point, when I was sort of alluding to like, is there going to be some breakthrough that makes MMM more accessible to perhaps smaller advertisers that don't have the time, energy, and resources to do this? I'm like, I think where it is. I think it's in the data preparation. I think the
No,
data
100%.
preparation we see a breakthrough with.
Oh, I mean, I'm using it every day in
Yeah.
my work to, get help with R code or
Yeah.
even sometimes just simple EDA, like upload the file and have it spit out some graphs for me. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge speed up there.
So maybe 2025 is the year that data scientists don't spend more than half their time doing data prep.
Hopefully.
That's the dream, at least.
Although I spent earlier this year, I spent a good like hour trying to get ChatGPT to format a Excel spreadsheet for me because the dates
Yeah.
were all wonky. It was a UK.
Facilitating. Yeah.
I was in the UK, so their date formats were this, and they
Yeah.
weren't consistent. And ChatGPT just, as much as I tried
Good.
and guided it,
Yeah.
and gave it encouragement, you can do this, and like,
Yeah. I
you
believe in
can't.
you.
You
You are
cannot.
the best Excel wizard in the world. Like,
Yeah,
know this.
it failed, but
Flatfile.io, by the way, I think would maybe be a tool that could do that for you. It
ooh,
talks about like transposing formats within CSVs and flat files. So,
interesting. Cool.
okay, yeah, no,
Right.
okay, I love that. Very interesting. Let's jump on to number three,
Whatever it is.
and so my big bet number three is. And we talked about this a bit. Oh, by the way, for anyone who's wondering about that AI and MMM thing, I think the episode with Dr. Ramlajara from, I just remember that from earlier this year, or
Yeah.
it was in last year, like that could be a good one to revisit. And maybe we'll even revisit that one to see like how much of that is a reality at this moment in time. Maybe get it back on the show. Okay, number three is, we talked about this on the MMM Gap episode, but it is the ability to allow for external performance calibration within ad platforms. And what I mean by that is the inherent reliance has always existed upon the relationship between a pixel with deterministic signal and identity that is resolved in a platform, and critically, the inability to see anything other than yourself driving conversion. So Facebook literally only sees Facebook, and that is a problem because of the over attribution to itself. And we've always known this. This is the the fundamental problem, but it is the only fundamental lever that we have for optimization right now inside of Meta or in Google, for example. Earlier this year, though, we did see that Meta is now allowing Google Analytics for calibration. Now,
Yeah.
I don't like that, and it's funny because I talked to some less measurement not folks who just aren't as in the weeds, right? And they're like, oh, I love it because it lets me optimize to my Google Analytics numbers. And I'm like,
I'm sure
oh,
those are right.
great. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, and you're gonna like, and they're like, yeah, and that's what the CFO looks at. So everything's going great. And I'm like,
Wait, CFO is looking at Google Analytics? What?
oh, dude, the horror story. Yeah,
Oh,
it's nuts. Like there is this like overly simplistic desire to still focus on deterministic clicks outside of the marketing world. It's a struggle, but
mm.
they're basically framing it up as we will optimize toward the signal. But what that is an over optimization toward clicks. And there isn't an inherent component of value association. But what we are seeing simultaneously is a shift toward value-based bidding mechanisms inside of these ad platforms. Google Marketing Solutions has a few very interesting. If you go to the Google Marketing Solutions GitHub, by the way, there's like 80 repos in there with all kinds of interesting tools and measurement solutions. And one of them is called GPS VB, and it allows for real-time calculations of things like lifetime value and long-term success or viability, or perhaps even calibration with a high velocity media mix model. And in that world, I do believe that we will start to see the ability to calibrate with external sources of truth that are not entirely reliant on these platforms. Meta's first move was Google Analytics because everyone had it, and they probably rightly or wrongly looked at it and said, the psychology will work for us. And people are doing it, and people are spending more money. That's not the best play. Now they're doing Northbeam. Okay, let's look in your own backyard. What about Robin? Bring Robin to Meta Business Manager and allow us to optimize on Robin based on outcomes from Robin.
I have mixed feelings on this. Like,
okay.
Obviously, as someone who focuses on MMM, day in and day out, like,
yeah,
I'm happy about this, but also I've seen plenty of cases where the models are terrible.
Sure.
And like a bad model is worse than no model at all, right? And I could very easily see someone taking, their bad Robin model and calibrating on that and having it just go haywire and be disastrous.
But is that any different to someone who misplaces a pixel? Right, like I've seen scenarios where we didn't put a decimal place in the transaction value, and you're like, so it thinks every single transaction is $170. Like, yeah, and I'm like, why would you? And they're like, we didn't think it would, and you're just like, okay, I don't quite understand the logic of why this happened, but everything that you have believed today has been wrong. And I guess the devil's advocate is, well, it's easier to place a pixel than it is to calibrate a model. Sure, I agree, but I do think that there are all kinds of misappropriation or misrepresentation that happen within the world of pixels, and we already all agree it's so inherently wrong. Like the idea that when I tell a media manager we're going to shift $20,000 to top of the funnel on Meta, and then they have to go, okay, do I have a ROAS target or anything? Or because in platform right now, it's already saying like it's 0 ROAS.
Mhm.
Like it's not connecting the dots for me. Do I just keep spending in perpetuity? How do I hit my, when do I hit dimensional returns? These are all the sort of post hoc calibration moments that they wish they had closer to real time. So I hear you on the danger, but I think the utility, the utility of a knife in a sushi kitchen is fantastic. The utility of a knife in a hostile war zone is very different, but it's the same tool. And so I'm looking at this saying there is an opportunity to use it right, and you have to operate with caution and be mindful. But to have that opportunity versus what we have today is going to be the big segue to the future, and I think plays into this idea of MMM going mainstream. If we can have media calibration to MMM, there's no reason why any brand should not have an MMM at that moment in time. It is a better source of truth than deterministic pixels.
And most of the major platforms have built-in conversion lift studies or incrementality testing, like that if you could fold that into the mix as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now there's a whole world of like, but that's user-based incrementality testing, and but like whatever. Like that could be an upcoming topic. By the way, I've been talking a lot about that philosophically, like, but yeah, to your point, it's there. They're leaning toward calibration,
and they're going to continue to iterate on it and improve it over time. I would hope or assume. I mean, the alternative is that they realize it's a big dud and they stop doing it or kill it off. I could see Google doing that. Google likes to kill things off.
They do, but Google doesn't like to kill things off that they make money from. And if what it does is allows brands to go, I should spend more for more upper funnel media. I should spend more there because that's what they've been trying to do with DDA for a long time, right? But there's the challenge persists with the over attribution to themselves. So if they will allow for and if they believe in the efficacy of their platform, then that
Exactly.
would be where we would see that opportunity. And I do think that Google might not look at that opportunity in search, but they will definitely look at that opportunity in YouTube.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Like that's where the future of Google is.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
All
I like
right.
that.
Big bit number 3. That's me to a T. If you hate it, if you love it, let me know. Otherwise, Jim, what do you got for us?
All right, kind of continuing my trend from the last one and being sort of less around the measurement and analytics side and more about the marketing side. So I think here's my big bet. I think most American marketers are going to continue to be enamored with the next shiny object, which most
Mm.
likely will be something that involves AI. And they're going to ignore the basic tenets of marketing and the past 10 or 20 years of research around things like the long and the short of it, brand salience, sophisticated mass marketing, good print positioning, except all those things that I've been learning over the past many weeks. And in short, they're going to continue to skip the diagnosis and strategy stages and skip straight to one of the 4 Ps, which is promotion, which, it's funny. Like I used to be the person that thought, oh, marketing, that's, you put ads online, that's marketing. And I was wrong. And I'm okay admitting that. I've learned that, marketing is the 4 Ps. It's product, it's price, it's placement,
Hmm.
it's promotion. And it's even more than that, right? It's market research, it's
Yeah.
strategy, it's audience segmentation, it's targeting, it's brand positioning, it's all of those things. And so there's an article that made the way around not too long ago, again by Mark Ritson. Um, I should probably get some other people to reference here, but he wrote this article. But there was the sentiment was floating
Get
around. There
Mark
was,
Rickson on the show.
I will ask him. Yeah,
Yeah.
but he wrote this in Marketing Week. Effectiveness ignorance has left American marketing lagging behind the rest of the world, and he makes a strong point. I think there are some points you could kind of push back against in here, but he does make a strong point. Um, and stop sharing that. So I have my own sort of anecdotal evidence too. So like whenever I talk to people, whether it's clients or you or other marketers, other analysts, I say, oh, what do you think about, Les Binet and Peter Fields, long and the short of it.
Mm.
And I just get blank stares. And people, I'm surprised. I'll be so happy when I can say that, and someone says, "Oh yeah, I love that with how they did this and that." But the point is, like, people in America aren't picking up what's being put down across the world, and specifically and interestingly, it seems to be the UK and Australia are kind of some hotbeds of kind of pushing the boundaries in terms of marketing research, marketing science. So you have the IPA, which is the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, that's in the UK. You have
Mm.
WARC, which is World Advertising Research Center, also in the UK. Although they're trying to expand, they have offices in the UK and Singapore, and in the US and Singapore. Um, you have Byron Sharp, who's the director of the Ehrenberg Bass. If I said to you, Simon, have you heard of the Ehrenberg Bass Institute? You would say,
I would actually say no, I haven't.
yeah, right. Like, but you talk to marketers in the UK, and like Byron Sharp wrote the Bible for marketing. Like he's one of the leading thought leaders
Mm.
in the space around. He's kind of done a lot for the marketing in the past 10, 20 years around distinctiveness versus differentiation, around
Mm.
sophisticated mass marketing. There's just a whole body of research that I feel like in America, I haven't pinned it down why. I don't have a thesis for like why we seem to have like stuck our heads in the sand, but maybe we've been more focused on sort of the digital and performance because, we have the Google and we have Facebook that was here and
Mhm,
kind of,
mhm.
I don't know, maybe that's part of it. But, yeah, I mean, you have the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, which is an academic sort of setting, but it's kind of bridged the gap to practitioners. You have
Yeah.
Les Binet and Peter Field in the UK, who were practitioners first, right? Like just trying to understand how this stuff works in the real world and kind of bridging that gap. And I think, in the US here, I think, yeah, we have AMA, the American Marketing Association.
Mhm.
it kind of feels a little bit more academic to me. Like it doesn't do a good job of kind of bridging the gap into like real world. I could be
Oh,
completely
no.
wrong on there. It could be on.
I think about that purely in a college context. I think about it honestly in like I've spoken at AMA chapters over the years at colleges, and that's when you think about it, and that's when you're like, okay, it's like the intro to marketing. It is an interesting situation though. One of the degree to which we have experienced just wholly just major shifts, tectonic shifts in the marketing landscape, predicated on the nature of short-term gains, because we are now exiting the printing money era. And I do think that there is a natural regression or a natural pendulum that swings back and forth between these two eras, where there's always, this is not a thing that is unique to the digital era, right? There have been these historically, when TV first came about, there was like a massive obsession of just like, well, we just got to be on TV. We just have to be there. And there wasn't necessarily the nuance that you saw in the magazine ads of that era. And you're like, oh, the magazine ads are incredible. And the TV ads are just like, smoke these cigarettes. And you're like, okay. Versus the magazine one was like a really made you think. It made you emotional, right? Like it was the copywriting of that era, and that was sort of diametrically opposed to the TV ads of just being present. And I think that there's this balance of sort of early bird gets the worm presence that is, it sets the tone for maybe how something's going to work. And then critically, we are now also living through the algorithm era, and that is that we over optimize towards the dumbest things, or the things that just like draw our attention. And I don't know how we get out of that and it's interesting to me that you're seeing like this is just an American construct, because I do want to look more into that, but it's a very interesting moment that we just have to reckon with, is that this is going to keep perpetuating. We're going to keep seeing things like make ugly ads, which is like it's a real thing. And look, there's true efficacy. There's measurable efficacy behind this. I think maybe what we will see though will be a shift in transactional mechanisms, and this is a big bet I actually made into Annuity's big bets. And the big bet I made there was about agentic commerce. This idea that AI agents, you will say, I'm planning a party for me and 20 people. It's a pizza party, organize it. And it will find, it'll source the pizzas, it'll pick the toppings, but it'll be cognizant of the fact that, oh, well, there's a vegetarian in Simon's family. Oh, he likes pepperoni. All these sort of preferences that I have. In an era where a machine is making decisions for you based on your preference knowledge, those preferences have to be established in some capacity. And I think that is where the return of brand marketing can come from, is an era where we have to focus on being present and preferential. And I don't think that is the key of how we do marketing right now. We just go with, here's something you want to buy it right now. And that, it's very short term versus the long term presence and preference.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been an overabundance of sort of the performance marketing.
Yeah.
And brand has kind of gone by the wayside. And you see in pockets here and there where that's starting to change, like Airbnb saying, oh, you know what, we're going to go all in on brand. No more search ads or no more performance. We're just going in on brand. So you kind of see some of that going on, but yeah, it's
but I
just
think all of that, by the way, was the reaction to the era of unmeasurable brand, or exactly. like brand went too far. It went way too far off this path of like, we're gonna spend $5 million on just making sure people know who you are, and you're like, is that a good thing? Like, I don't know, this Jaguar situation recently. I had an interesting interaction with Neil Hoyne on LinkedIn about it, where I was like, I don't think all publicity is good publicity. And anyway, he deleted the post. So, well, he's a great guy, friend of the show. But it was one of those moments where I was like, I think that's a bad take. Just because everyone is now interested in Jaguar does not mean Jaguar sales are going to spike. It is a very, very mismatched brand campaign with their target audience, unless they fundamentally change the product. They've forgotten the 4 Ps. Their product is still a car for men over 70.
They shit the bed even before the 4 Ps. They forgot who their market was.
Yeah.
They don't have a market orientation, right? Market orientation says we look at our business through the eyes of our customers. Right?
Yeah.
Who are our customers? We need to think. There's so much about like, I mean, I don't know what kind of crack they're smoking, but
it is. Wow. Yeah. It's intense stuff. No, my big bet for Jaguar next year is that they are not going to see an increase in sales, because they also raised the price. They it's like they took the 4 Ps and then they were like, what if we just do the opposite of each of these? And you're like, what? You're becoming
What
more
if
of
we
a
had
premium brand. Your advertising is going to your complete non-target market. Like at least with Bud Light, when Bud Light had their situation where they alienated a core group of their consumers,
like,
they
we'll
didn't
call
suddenly go
Corp.
like, "Oh, and by the way, we're now a premium beer, $5 a pan." They'll be like, "Oh, even more," just like hit
Yeah,
punching America in the gut. Like
yeah.
Middle America hates you now. So,
Boy.
gosh, all right. Well, hey, these are our big bets. This has been a lot of fun. Gosh, I definitely want to do this again next year.
Great.
And this has just been, yeah, it's been good time. Do you have any incremental insight for us today, or am I just throwing you on the spot randomly?
Let's see, incremental. I don't have any incremental insight other than people should unplug for the holidays, step away
Yes.
from the computers, and go out and feel some grass under your feet.
Go
Or
out and touch it.
in my case, freeze. I would freeze my feet off because I would feel snow under my feet.
Oh,
It's
yes.
frigid. We got to
Wow.
deal with,
Just
but
go out and
get
shovel some
outside,
snow.
get some sunshine,
Yeah.
and yeah, live your life.
Yeah. Absolutely. And maybe challenge yourself to read some things. Go out and maybe read the long and the short of it. Maybe
Yeah,
that's the incremental insight. Go get a book.
there you go.
All right. Well, a pleasure as always, Jim.
Talk to you next time.
Adios.